I'm an alcoholic. My name's Bob. Hi, everyone. Just delighted to be with you this evening, and what a marvelous day this has been. Came along with my dear and cherished friend Butch from Barrie this morning, and have found it to be a most fulfilling day. Just loved it. You've got a marvelous facility here, and I'd like the committee to thank them for inviting me along. A marvelous supper, and just been a great, great day. But you know, the icing on it was the countdown in its final stages. I get a real buzz out of this sort of thing. In the hall this evening, and you were observant to this, there are two ladies, one named Michelle and the other named Karen with 2 days, and then Rainer, who's around here somewhere, with 1 day. That just fills me with something that is indescribably beautiful, because I have the same kind of hope for them that so many dear folk had for me when I was a new guy. One of them, who remained nameless, I guessed her age pretty closely, happened to be about my age when I came to AA, and what a marvelous adventure lies ahead. And all we might ask of you, dear folk, all three of you, all we would ask you, would you give us a chance? Just give us a chance. No promises to make, no urgings beyond. Just give us a chance. And there we go from there. I'm mindful at the moment of a little bit of language squib that was in a Box 459 issue of 2 or 3 years ago now. And you know, friends, I believe it's so brief. I believe it with all my heart. Gratitude. Gratitude is a constant emotional sensation. Gratitude is a constant emotional sensation. It continues, one day at a time, obviously, but it just doesn't come and go in a fleeting sort of a fashion. I find with me, it's always present. Grateful to be with you. I'm a profoundly grateful fellow to be in AA. When I think really and truly, we're 65 years old next Saturday, June 10th, 1935. And there are a few in the hall, maybe. I'm one of them who was living then. I was just a boy. And if you weren't living then, this took place in your parents' lifetime. I think that's magnificent. It's a prejudicial view, I hasten to say, but to me it's the miracle of the 20th century. Alcoholics Anonymous. It's people's, it's program, and it's prayers. I'm going to do really as best I can, friends, what I've been asked to do, which is to just share with myself. That's all you've ever really asked. And when I think about that, memories, floodgates just burst wide open. I have truly been a blessed man. I have walked on the backs of giants. And those giants of men and women who shared so completely and fully with me, it would perhaps be bad-mannered to put forth a litany of their names, because so many of them, almost all, are dead. But there's one name, friends, that will always cross my lips. By name, my deceased sponsor, Davy Thompson, Stuttering Davy from Oshawa. Some of you in the hall either knew him or heard of him, or your sponsor knew him. I never go anywhere that I don't hear about Dave. And there isn't a day goes by I don't think of him. Most times with humor. He had a phenomenal sense of humor. He was able, with a very high-profile presence in AA, by self-deprecating humor. He made fun of his own speech impediment, and people loved him. Think of him every day. And when I think of Dave, I may just start this little exercise tonight with a wee story. I was in AA now for a little more than a year. Couldn't go to the front of a room. Couldn't go to the front of a room. We didn't have chips then. I don't know what I would have done had they been in place. I guess I'd have done like everybody else does, muscle my way forward. But I'd been asked to read. I'd been even asked to speak. I just couldn't do it. Thank goodness those dear folk who were so helpful to me didn't beat me up with such a notion that you should never say no. They recognized my deficiency. They appreciated my inadequacies. And all they would do is just smile and say, we'll get you later. Well, by now, with a medallion rattling in my pocket, I couldn't persist with this. I've been asked to speak at another town meeting. It's reasonable, I guess, would you agree to maybe ask your sponsor for a little bit of counsel in such circumstances? And I said, Davy, do you have any advice for me? Do you know what he said? And I won't mimic his speech hesitancy at this point. He said, sure, go ahead. Be yourself, do your best, and practice the presence of God. Be yourself, do your best, practice the presence of God. The members in the hall here this evening, whom I've known for many years, and with the utmost respect, I doubt really tonight, friends, if that counsel could be improved upon. It sounds pretty solid to me as I share it with you on this occasion. That's what I can commit myself to you for the next few minutes or so. Definitely I'll be myself. I can't talk like anybody else, nor should I even pretend to propose to. Do my best. My best, even at that I feel inadequate with it, my best is for those three dear folk who are new to us, without shortchanging anybody else who's been around here forever either. Sharing of one's own experience. Well, I went and did that to the best of my ability. The point of my story is coming now when that group closed 2 weeks later. It did. It shut down. It stayed shut. It's still shut. It's shut right now. It's shut. You have to be so careful what you say to your sponsor, don't you? I said, Davy, do you suppose my being there had anything to do with that group closing? Do you know what he said? Probably. Do you know what I was seeking, friends? And I never have from that day to this. I was seeking praise. I was seeking praise of some convoluted way. I was seeking praise. Never sought it since. Now, having said that, there isn't an AA member in the assembly this evening who, through circumstance, doesn't necessarily find themselves on the receiving end of the principle of reassurance. You're going to be okay. Whatever you're going through, stay with us. Don't leave us, mercifully. Stay with us. You'll be okay. That's reassurance. We all need to have that from time to time. When we're new, we needed it with some particular frequency, and even in a continuing membership, there are occasions when our wheels can fall off or we get worried about something, and here then is the real message of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the message is every bit applicable to Karen and Michelle and Rainer as it is to any of us who have been here forever. Stay a little longer and try a little harder. That, friends, is the real message. Not some kind of an in-depth version of what the 7th step really means. Stay with us. Come with us and stay with us. One day at a time, by those increments, of course. Well, my story, such as it is, I made the acknowledgement, of course, that I'm an alcoholic. And having said that, friends, this is a truism, too, and we don't hear this too often. It's usually the other way around. There was no alcoholism in my home at all. Absolutely none. And I'm talking about a large heritage here. My grandfather was the eldest of 17 kids. My mother was 93 years of age when she passed away. Never had a drink in her life. I can. When I think of her, I see her face before me. And dear lady, a very, very dear lady. I can just hear her voice. If I were to say to Mom, you know something? If I'm okay until the 17th of July, I will not have had a drink for 42 years. Do you know what she'd say? So what? That's no big deal. I haven't had a drink for 93. So I guess things can be termed as being relative, in that sort of a fashion. I'll share with you briefly, if I may, my most distant memory. I can't go back any further than this. I'd be maybe, 5? I don't know. All I wanted to be when I grew up was a kind and gentle man. True. I didn't say anything to anybody about this. I guess kids in the neighborhood, what would we want it to have been? A policeman, a fireman, the garbage man, whatever indeed it may have been, the baker? Kind and gentle man. The example for that was in my own home. Dad was a disabled fellow, and I had never ever heard him complain about that disability. He complained about me now and then, and he was to die all too young, I think. But there was the example, right there in my own home, with no alcoholism. Strange thing. There's a word in our text that sort of applies to that, or could apply to it. The word is baffling. Just baffling. Isn't it a baffling disease? Why can someone over there drink and I can't? They can drink, we can't? Makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. Skinny, shy, quiet, bashful, quick to blush, skinny and scared. And there's about 17 years worth in one sentence if we're looking for brevity. Dear, come back, would you do this? Come back with me, please, to elementary school. I know it's a long time ago. Just about the time the earth was cooling, I think. and this shy wimp of a kid and sitting way back in the corner there someplace, the teacher would ask a question. Female, likely. Could have been male a couple of times. And I would just feel my temples pound. My face would start to flush to red. My heartbeat would accelerate. Nothing's happened yet. She's just asked a question, for mercy's sake. But it was a horrible experience. Every now and then I would hear from her the two worst words that could ever fall anybody's mouth in such circumstances. Bobby Dobson, my name. It was just an awful experience. I may have known the answer to the question. That doesn't seem to fit into the mix of things. It was just an awful experience. Obviously, most often, she called your name. That brought forth a reaction, too. One of tremendous relief. I just dodged another bullet. It seemed to me, friends, as a kid, I was either in a state of abject terror, like the example I just gave you, or I dodged a bullet. What a way to live. I don't know what Mr. In-Between means. I don't know what average means. I haven't the foggiest idea what normalcy is. Never have. It's getting kind of late in the game. Maybe I never will. I don't know. But let's move ahead a little. You remember that too, eh, John? Let's move ahead just a little bit to the teenage years, the dating situation. Oh, be joyful. The girls taking an interest in the fellows and the fellows in the girls. How wonderful. I thought it was the pits. I like the idea. Let's not misunderstand. I like the idea. But I was so deficient, so inadequate, didn't measure up, didn't fit in, didn't belong. I can still remember the gal's name as if that's important. I wanted in the worst way to go out with her. Finally, I conjured up the mettle to finish dialing the number on her phone. To my astonishment, she said she'd like to go with me. This was to a Friday night movie. Had to be a movie because you don't talk. Does that make any sense to anybody? Sure made sense to me at the time. That was for a week Friday. So I had from now, when I phoned her, till a week Friday to stew about this. I was consumed with regret for having even called her. Because now what am I going to do? I could picture myself knocking on her door. Hi there. Makes for kind of a short evening, doesn't it? Not very much to say after hi there, is there? So that's enough. Now there's about 17 years or thereabouts. All I would ask you to do, friends, with just a minimum of imagination, put a couple of good stiff drinks into a woebegone like me, and you had a happening. It was an event, really. It's rather too bad you missed it. In fact, it's an awfully good thing that you did. And the party was on. I love to party. For all my deficiencies, there's one thing I could do was drink. I don't think I want to take that to the bank in the morning, but I conjured up this notion of, it was a falsehood, of course you all know that, of security. I felt good about drinking. I loved to be with drinking people. I loved the bar scene. You know what I liked as much as anything else? Tinkle, tinkle. Wasn't that a nice sound? Tinkle, tinkle. And the stirring of a drink, the whole atmosphere, the smoke that after you've been there for an hour comes out your ears, just loved everything about it. The camaraderie, the spirit of fun and so on. I just love to drink. Baffling kinds it comes into the picture here too, since I've seized upon that word momentarily. I was baffled at times. I relished the compliments from people, and I was a skinny kid. I weighed 107, 108, 109, 110 pounds. And I said, gee, for a little guy, could you ever drink? Did I ever like that? Made me feel awfully good. I drank with a guy who was 6'3", 225 pounds. He'd be under the table, and I was still drinking. That did all kinds of wonderful things to me. I could drink at times in those days. We don't talk quantities or capacity in AA except for what one drink might do to us. I would drink enough that would perhaps paralyze a small water buffalo and still be functioning. Still be functioning. Boy, was that to change. Was that to change. Oh, later on, that completely collapsed. But here I was with this falsehood. Alcoholism. It's in the wings. It's disguised. Isn't it a shameful acknowledgement, but a true one just the same? Just waiting to really get the grip on me. Alcoholism is a disease. It's physical, it's mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's economic. It's disastrous. A man took a drink, and a drink took a man. And many, many of you ladies aren't offended by that. Of course you're not. It's not sexist. A person of some quality. I mentioned about, with praise, my upbringing. Good people. Good family. No abuses of any kind. And here I was entrapped with some real serious troubles ahead. Right about now, perhaps I should mention the couple of other isms that went with my alcoholism. It wasn't just restricted to those I mentioned. One was big mouthism. I've got a tongue in my head that could curl paint. I could talk to those cars out there and they'd move. I hurt people. It's a weapon. I hurt people with this thing. I broke hearts with this thing. I never took a drink in my life to break anybody's heart. The vast majority in the hall, I don't know personally. You didn't either. I know you didn't, even though I may not know you personally. I know you didn't. But this is what sort of emerged. This is what followed. And when this thing got in gear, all kinds of terrible things happened. So I got into a lot of trouble with my mouth. Just my mouth. Quietest guy in the room until I get half blitzed, and then it's a different story completely. Another ism, absenteeism. I just kind of show up missing. Vanish. Where is he? I don't know. He was here this morning, but this is this afternoon. I have an employment record, and none of this stuff is qualifications for membership in AA. Please, the third tradition takes care of that. Just a simple desire to stop drinking or desire to make some changes. Give us a chance. Let us help you, if you will. However, I worked one time with a terrible employment record. I worked one time for Canada Bread for 2 days. It's not really a very long time, is it? I'd like to have you believe that I didn't like their pension plan. I wouldn't touch that with a barge pole if I were you. I never in my life saw so much bread. Everywhere on Monday, bread everywhere there was bread. Oh, what a place. Canada Bread. Tuesday at noon I got thirsty. Ever get thirsty? Oh, gee. I could, and all I did, the theme song of the practicing alcoholic, just a couple. That's what I went for, just a couple. I don't know why at home groups that we don't make a slogan out of that. Makes an awful lot more sense than some of those dumb things we had on the wall, you know. Just a couple, just a couple. 2 + 2 + 2. I've fallen out of a car. I've been arrested. swearing at and about and with the officer that I only had a couple. None of them were nearly as dumb as I pretended that they may be. And there we were. So I went drinking at noon, and I come back very late. Mid-afternoon, I guess, and I was strident now. Ever get to that particular mood at the moment where you're not about to take any guff from anybody? It doesn't matter who it is. This is the quiet, shy, skinny, scared, woebegone kid that worked Monday, frightened of all that was around me, including the bread. Now there was an audience. I told them in no uncertain terms what they could do with every loaf of bread that ever baked. I don't remember anybody having any questions, come to think of it. Then I told them what they could do with the rolls. But friends, would you agree, you get into a spot like this, don't stop now. It's absolutely critical that we get the last word in, isn't it? It always seems to me to be that way. Home, particularly, not a very good place to be. The cop shop, I don't recommend that. I've tried that too. It doesn't work. I got the last word in all right. I told Canada Bread what they could do with their muffins. That was the end of that job. The muffins did me in, you know. I may have even had a half-assed career there if it hadn't been for those muffins. So that was the end of that. I don't know even why I tell that story. The other day, wherever I wasn't in the room 5 minutes till 4 people said, "Don't forget the bake shop. Don't forget the bakery." This sounds a tad patriotic. Nothing could be further from the truth. But I've been barred from the Canada House for life. Doesn't that just tear the heart right out of you? Benny's in the hall. He knows where it is. As far as I know, it's still there. Queen and Sherburne Streets. The only way I can describe it, friends, it's an upholstered sewer which has been there forever. I'd been there, I guess, since noon on the Saturday. Old Jake, the waiter, he said something that it's terrible language. It's the most searing of all language choices I can think of. Beats blasphemy. He said, "You're off." Aren't those terrible words? You're off. I said, "What?" He said, "You're not only off, you're out." What a way to treat a customer. I've been there since noon. This was nighttime. I said, "Jake, I'm not leaving. It'll take you and the British Eighth Army to get me out of here tonight." Did you ever come up with these things? Oh, well, I can only assume the British Eighth Army was busy because Jake took care of it all by himself. We're taught around AA to ask for help. He didn't ask for any help. He looked after it all by myself. As I landed 4 Eagle at the corner of Queen and Sherburne. Do you know what I like about that place, looking back over the years, presuming it's still there? There was a neon sign on the side of the building, and it said, with some of the letters burned out, "Ladies and Escorts." Hasn't been a lady in there since Lady Simcoe stopped by for a leak in 1790. No, really. And I was one of the escorts. Oh, dear me. Well, so much for that. That was the kind of the happenings, and if we've had a smile about it, that's marvelous, and our book talks about that. The laughter in our midst. We had a lot of it today, didn't we? It's good stuff. It's healthy. It's invigorating. Because when we got here, we suffered. And there's an obligation on those of us who are graced and blessed with the staying capacity that AA has provided us to make people feel welcome. The new ones, the not so new ones, the old timers, you're welcome here. This is the place to be. I wouldn't have wanted to miss this today for anything. I'm not overly in love with what I'm doing right now, but just to be in your midst is the greatest privilege of my lifetime. I get moved when I think about this. And with a couple of buddies, Clarence and Bev were talking before the meeting was called here, Bob, tonight about one of the real mysteries of my life. I have no solution to this, friends, is that so many of us find, after all the agony, What we looked for in the bottom of a bottle or in a drug or whatever, we found it here. We come here, we enjoy and savor the experience of each other, and together we get well in recovery. And for reasons with medallions in our purse or pocket, we cast it aside. I have no answer to that at all. I am curious from time to time, and I will ask questions, but how vital it is for us to stay one day at a time and stay close to each other. It's vital, in fact, and I therefore tuck that in by a well-wishing measure, you may be sure. The things that brought me to that ever-necessary point of surrender were none of the things I've mentioned. They should have, perhaps. Of course you'd agree with that. I vowed one time, because my dad had worked in the office, he was a disabled fellow, as I mentioned, in the OPP office for most of his life. So police wasn't a bad word. I got in trouble with the police. I got in trouble with most everywhere. With the progressiveness of this disease. It ran rampant. This drink tastes like the next one should. And I was drinking, of course, when I shouldn't have been drinking. By now there's a family. There's a wife and there's 2 little kiddies. Very, very small children. I love that little family. I love those kids. Don't you love yours? You'd hardly come to an AA function like this to hear somebody show up just to say they love their kids. I think there's nothing more commonplace than that. But you wouldn't know it by my behavior. No, sir, you would not know it by the way in which I acted. And I'm going to make this acknowledgement, friends, and it still gives me anguish to acknowledge it. I'm not in pain anymore. I've been forgiven. The slate is wiped clean. I've been with you forever. I'm a happy man, day in and day out a happy man. But the acknowledgement of a truism must indeed be made in the fullness of a sharing spirit. I was an absentee husband and a derelict father. And that gave me fits. That just gave me fits. Couldn't hack that. Just couldn't hack that at all. Evidence was condemning that I was in a serious state of difficulty. I had been offered help by an AA fellow who'd been sober 3 or 4 months. He invited me to come to AA, and I rejected it. Out of hand, I just rejected it. To my regret. But that's the way I was. I was going to solve this or it wouldn't get solved. I had that behind this awful deficiency, these terrible inadequacies, this awful, awful penetrating bashfulness and shyness, there was a fierce pride. Nothing they put in a glass, jar, keg, bottle, or drum will ever beat me. And it was beating me, friends, every time out. I can recall making a phone call on a Halloween day to a 4-year-old son. Good kid. I meant well, didn't you? Of course I meant well. Good people sit in these chairs. You're a good person. You're an awfully good person, Karen and Michelle and Rainer. You may not have heard that too much lately. I'm bloody well telling you. You're good people. Come with us and stay with us. Anyway, you don't have to even like kids to appreciate the enthusiasm and the joy in an innocent 4-year-old boy's voice. Daddy was coming home. The apples and candy kisses, and he'd be a pirate. I don't remember. It'd be something along those lines. I didn't get home. I went drinking for just a couple. 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. I got home drunk. Not blacked out. Drunk. I saw for me, friends, that night in this flat that we're living in the north end of the city of Oshawa, 3 tear stains. 3 tear stains on the left side of that innocent 4-year-old boy's cheek, where in heartbreak and disappointment, more dry than wet, 2 up here about the cheekbone, 1 in the middle about the jawbone, where he'd cried himself to sleep with heartbreak and disappointment. Alcoholism, gangrene of the soul, soul sickness. And I was awfully soul sick when I got to you. And you know, friends, I have many, many beliefs, and I'm not going to keep you here all night by any means. You may be sure that you've had a very full day. I believe this with all my heart. I surely indeed do. These are healing chairs we're sitting on. Oh, yes, they are. Be quick to condemn if you're so determined, but they are healing chairs if you give us a chance. We deal here with wellness in AA. Wellness. My group, along with Buddy Butch, we meet Tuesday night in Barrie. Collier Street United Church, 8 o'clock, you're welcome. Love to see you. It's a rare, rare bird when either one of us misses. Just love to be there. Look forward. It's group night. Just about the time I'm really beginning to miss some of those turkeys, it's Tuesday morning and I'll see them Tuesday night. Love my group. And that's not surprising to anybody, isn't it? So very, very much a truism. If we try and live AA, we love it. And if we live it, we love it. And if we love it, we live it. And it's indistinguishable and inseparable. I'm not one bit different here, I'm sure, friends, for the most part, than I am on the highway, or I am in the office until I retire, or I am in the neighborhood, or the convenience store, or the cleaning shop, or the resident bank, or whatever. Hey, it's called recovery. And I'm so happy indeed to be a part of it. Well, enough about the unemployment and all those kind of things. I had been unemployed for quite a time. I had just gone beyond my 30th birthday. I had been discharged yet again from another company that I worked for. This time, the discharge had some added notion to it. I had stolen some of their money, something I could never really have fashioned myself doing, but I did it. And now I'm unemployed. Now I'm unemployable. And please, oh please, these aren't requirements for AA membership. Many that I know have had good jobs and still come to us. It just seemed to be the way it was for me. And I stayed that way for a while. On a day that I could never have predicted at all, I went drinking. I hadn't drank for a week, only because of economics, no resolve on my part, just money, lack of it, did that. Ever drink yourself sober? Isn't it a terrible place to be? Just an awful place to be. Well, I drank that day, and I should really, I was drunk. You can't dress that one up. I was drunk, but there was a clarity. I knew where I was. I was in a downtown Toronto booze can, and I was overwhelmed with helplessness. I have never in my life, friends, been so helpless as I was that particular afternoon. And I remember that my friend Mick, who had called on me in a snowstorm a year ago March, had made some reference to a Friday night. He did something at a group, whatever that is. This was a Friday. There was a payphone in the corner. I had a dime and a nickel. That was my worth. I went over there, and for a dime, I can still remember his phone number, I called him. The unseen hand. What else can it be? I couldn't make a decision of any kind at that particular time in my life, not of any value at all. Get a load of that. Wouldn't it be the worst of all situations if I said to you in the spirit of openness, you know something? I thought finally I recognized a drinking problem. And I went over and sat down in the corner of a room and thought out this whole situation and thought, oh my goodness gracious me, I think today I've got a touch of alcoholism. I think I'll give AA a call. Just a touch, mind you. Let's not overdo this. Just a touch. This balderdash. I was overwhelmingly dispirited. I was down. I could see nothing ahead for me, friends. Nothing. Nothing ahead for me at all but the madness and the blackness of raging alcoholism. That was my sight line. And from that payphone in the corner, I called my friend Mick, and he came and got me. Took me to my first AA meeting. I love going to meetings. Just love. With that exception, that's the only one. I just love coming to meetings. I love to listen to what you have to say. I loved this afternoon. I loved Ed's talk. I loved everybody's talk. Sitting there and listening to what you've had to say. And I've benefited from that. How fortunate I have been, friends, when I say that I've been a blessed man. Never has Alcoholics Anonymous become Alcoholics Monotonous. Never. It has for some, oh yeah, you hear one, you hear them all. What do I want to listen to that guy for? I heard him last week, last month, last year, last century. I don't feel that way. I just love it. I love to listen to what you have to say. That night would be the singular exception. The singular thought in my mind after he came and picked me up was, now look what I've gone and done. As if I wasn't in enough trouble, I'm adding this to it. I'm adding AA to it. It could have been AA, BB, CC, YY. Wouldn't have mattered. I was just drunk. Have you ever been drunk trying to act sober? Isn't it an awful assignment? That's work. I was drunk. I couldn't walk, which was part of it all, I suppose. I couldn't talk, which was maybe a disguised blessing. I had nothing to say to anybody who was listening to anyway. And there I was, trying to look and act sober in my first AA meeting. It's also been my last drink. But there I was. And I don't remember that much about the meeting. It went on and on and on. The chair chaired. The readers read. We read everything that night but the British North America Act. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, and a week Thursday. It was just a horrible night. And I was sitting there in my misery, and there was footprints and kneecaps and shin bones and, oh my God, man in the glass, the gal in the glass, and the doggy in the window, and the fish in the bowl. I don't remember, if I want to be honest with you, but it was just a horrible, horrible night. And is it correct historically? There were 2 world wars? 2? That night the speaker was in 5. In the Italian campaign, drinking and/or drunk, he shared, crossing over minefields. I was sitting there in my misery hoping he'd step on one. Poor guy, he's deceased now. But maybe he'll get even with me on the other side. But so much for that. What did I get from my first AA meeting? I just love to listen to what you have to say. I got dick. Well, what would you expect me to say? I gave you my very poor interpretation of what I can remember, which is almost nothing. Mercifully, it wasn't over. Or the formal meeting was. It was a lady, ladies. God bless you. I mean that. God bless you. There weren't that many ladies in AA in July 1958. Scarborough Group had 3, a population explosion of sorts. One of them, I don't know which, all 3 are deceased and have been for years. I don't know which one it was, really. Over here came a lighted cigarette. I was smoking then. Over here came a half-full cup of coffee. Don't worry if you spill it. I hadn't heard that kind of language before. Don't worry if you spill it. The message of AA for me that particular evening. 2 taps on this shoulder by the same lady. This language choice, precisely this language choice. You're going to be okay, you know. You're going to be okay, you know. I didn't turn on my heel and get my big mouth in gear and bluster her and say, you idiot, you horse's neck, you fool, etc., etc. Do you realize I'm liable to go into penitentiary for 3 or 4 years, you idiot? I said none of these things. Know why? Didn't think of them. The unseen hand. The unseen hand again. When I say I've been a richly blessed fellow, those aren't just idle words. I meant them from right here. And oh, how I wish, time is moving on, how I wish I could portray to you the recovery program in its entirety. And about the only way I could do it is sort of in an imaginary way, and I'll get to a couple of other things before taking a chair. I just could wish at a time like this, Bob, that there was a little zipper over the left side of my chest. It could be, in theory only it is, of course, obviously, unzipped, and open that up and say, friends, have a real good look what's in there. You're going to see wellness, you're going to see recovery. You're going to see the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous in action, not in conversation, but in action. Self-discipline, good moral conduct, kindness, thoughtfulness, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. We've heard that, of course, before. Restitution, confession, principle of repentance, and the most glowing principle of all is the principle of forgiveness. Have been forgiven for the dirties, the nasties, the stinkies, these stinky little things. The secret saver that I was, I have no more secrets at all anymore. Thank God for that with this program. In time and staying with you, may I just take the story of the 4-year-old boy whose heart I broke that Halloween night. He was 6 when I got to AA. Add 2 years to that would make him 8, and obviously I'm with you a couple of years. I had a birthday. In the squiggly language of an 8-year-old boy, this language choice precisely to the greatest dad in the whole world. Nothing added, friends, nothing taken away. That's just exactly what it was. I was overwhelmingly grateful to have received that. I was deeply touched by that. How would I thank you for this? I talked it over with my sponsor and a couple of other friends. How do you say thanks for this? Alcoholics Anonymous, it's people's, it's program, and it's prayers. And they didn't have anything particular definitive to say other than they were pleased to hear the story. Impressed with it? You may be sure that I was. Now, if indeed I was impressed with that, how do you think I feel tonight? I beg of you, how do you think I feel tonight? He'll be 48 years old in August and hasn't changed his mind. Talked from last night. Hasn't changed his mind. Is it any wonder that I love AA? Is it any wonder that I love you for having given me so much? Is it ever any wonder that I love a God that you introduced me to that I wanted no part of? Absolutely. And I made it clear. Absolutely no part. I made it clear to my sponsor. And he handled that with a plum. He sure did. All he said was, that's okay. That's okay. What kind of a dumb answer is that? That's okay. But you like going to meetings? Oh, yes. You'll be at the group tonight? Oh, yes. That's okay. That's okay. You know, I remember saying to him, what a character he was. I was all stretched out more than once, but one time, I phoned him one summer afternoon. This would be in August, I guess. I'd be sober 2 or 3 weeks. I was in a terrible state. And I said, what do you think I should do, Dave? He said, go for a walk. I thought, the world of AA as I know it. And this turkey saying, go for a walk. But I promised before I phoned him, I would do whatever he said. Whatever he said, I would do it. So I went for a walk. When I come back in at his suggestion, I phoned him. Can you believe it? I felt better. Isn't that outrageous? Isn't that go for a walk? I'd hate to suggest to anybody go for a walk, but that's what it was. The helpfulness is the point I'm attempting to make. You've introduced me to so very, very much. Good, clean, healthy, wholesome living. I have just loved the day being with you. The spirituality, and I try very hard to, in day-tight compartments, to practice the presence of God. That's not something particularly mysterious. There's a sense of it. There's a presence. There's a power, and I'm powerless. There's a power in this hall. There's a power with the panels that we heard earlier in the day. There's just a magnificent sense of worth, of belonging, dignity, self-respect, and wholesomeness. I didn't ask Bob this. I think it's fair to probably presume we did this earlier in the day, of course, a number of times. We'll likely be closing this meeting, and it should be happening very soon, with the Lord's Prayer. I find that's a tremendously helpful instrument of spirituality. It really is. Sometimes I mumble it, I have to confess, at the closing of our meeting at home, Butch. Other times I think about it as I'm praying, because it has meaning and it has depth. It's a very brief little outline, friends, that I've scratched out here. The alphabet letter P. I scratched out 7 here that emerged from the Lord's Prayer. The first one is paternal. I need something fatherly. I need a paternal influence. Fatherly influence. Next one is presence. I already touched on that. Presence of God. Just the presence of God. Priority. Priority. Does that not comfortably fit in with the AA program? God's will is a priority. Do we not urge for this as we put forth into practice our step 3 and our step 11? Of course we do. Provision. Provision. Daily bread. Daily bread includes shelter, including sustenance, including air and water and that sort of thing. And here's a real clinker right here. Pardon. Just to be pardoned. I've already touched on the principle of forgiveness. Having repented. That's a forerunner to forgiveness, is to repent. And all this is clean, good stuff, really. Pardon followed. Power. I need power. In the worst way. That's not ego. I'm not talking about that kind of crap at all. Power. Power to be able to face life on life's terms. Had a mild stroke last fall, and it disadvantaged me somewhat. I seem to be doing okay with it now. But I needed the power of the people. The power of the people. Right here in this beloved fellowship, yours and mine, to help me. And they did, unfailingly so. And I needed, of course, the power of prayer and the power of the 12 steps. The one I'll close this part of it with is praise. I praise God every day for His protection and for His care. I could never have imagined Fred ever talking this way, and yet I do so tonight with particular comfort. Maya, I have enjoyed being with you. I'm so pleased, and I hope to say hello and goodbye to those 3 again that I made reference to at the early part of this. Maya, I wish you well. My heart just aches for you towards wellness. Give us a chance if you would, please. Oh, please, oh, please, oh, please. We're not able to resort to preaching or sermonizing, or you'll never find. I never did respond to a pointed finger, so I'm not going to use it tonight either. Never did. I hated a pointed finger or a raised voice. I didn't respond to that either. Come with us and stay with us. And that includes all of those, without exception, who were acknowledged in the countdown. All of you. And having said that, friends, I have a wish. I have a wish for you. It's all-inclusive. I know there are Al-Anon here. I just talked to Bev before the meeting. Al-Anon up here. There could be Al-Ateen, I'm not sure. Nobody, their spouses, obviously, and friends and guests and family, perhaps. Nobody's left out. That's the point I'm making. Nobody is left out. May God's richest blessings just be heaped upon you. Just be heaped upon you, because you deserve it. You deserve it. You've suffered enough. You've hurt enough. You've been isolated enough. You've been alone enough. You've anguished enough. You've been sleepless enough. You've been occupied and preoccupied with terror, as I was, much too much, much too often, and much too long. Come with us and stay with us. God's richest blessings just heaped upon you. And you know where that came from, friends? Yes, it came from a loving God. Yes, indeed, it came from the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, these beloved men and women that I love so dearly, and indeed my love for you has already been stated. But another add-on to that, you know where that really came from? A 5-year-old boy? You know where that came from? A kind and gentle man. God bless you and thanks.
This CD was created by Dave and Jackie in Guelph, Ontario. Our phone number is 1